Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Esports in Edmonton panel. I'm so excited today because esports, as we know, is a really hot topic right now. It's growing rapidly. It's something that we're here. This is why we're here. I'm really excited because both globally as well as locally, they're growing differently, more organically. But we've also got an amazing group of folks here from the Alberta Esports Association who are going to walk us through how Edmonton relates to the global esports picture, as well as the path that the Alberta Esports Association is on that is going to affect the local esports industry, the global industry, and obviously all of our screen industries here in Edmonton. So I really want to get to know these folks a little bit better. So I'm going to start with some intros. So I'd love to get to know, let's start with Victor.
Sure. So, hey everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I'm the president and co-founder of the Alberta Esports Association, and I've been around for, gosh, like a decade and a half now, 15 years or so, running grassroots events alongside Brad.
Awesome. And that's a great segue into getting to know Brad.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brad Jones. I'm a co-founder and vice president of the Alberta Esports Association, and like Victor, I've been around for 15 years running events and doing all sorts of esports and gaming related things.
Amazing. And new here with us is Tina.
Hello. Hey, y'all. I'm Tina Song. I'm currently the PR executive at AESA, and I'm also the social media manager at Panda Global. I've been working in kind of the esports space and doing social media for about 2 to 3 years now. Stuff, just you might have seen my work, G2, T1, here and there. So yeah, pleasure to be here.
Amazing. Well, welcome all of you. I think we're so excited because we have obviously both of our co-founders and a powerhouse of a PR lead here. So we're really excited to talk about this. But I kind of want to start with a little bit of basics. I know most people watching this will understand things a little bit more, but I'd love to start with what esports looks like in Edmonton.
Yeah, maybe I can kick off on that. So, Edmonton actually has a pretty long history for esports, even before it was called esports, and people were just playing video games competitively. And it really just goes back to the mid 2000s, around the time where I got started. There were some grassroots competitors here playing games first, like Super Smash Brothers Melee and some arcade titles at this grassroots level, but they've really grown over the years. And Edmonton in particular has one of the largest and most active esports communities just in the world, frankly, all happening here at that grassroots level. We have a huge club at the University of Alberta where they run events weekly prior to the COVID pandemic. And we have a number of different grassroots communities within the city, like the Edmonton Fighting Game community, the Edmonton Smash community, as well as a number of student groups at a few of these post-secondary institutions. There's a University of Alberta club, there's a NAIT club, there's a Concordia Club, and so right now it all kind of exists. It's fragmented, but they're here and they've been growing and thriving for the last decade and a half. And certainly I'm from that space and from that community, and we're looking to start taking some next steps to really grow Edmonton and the ecosystem here a lot more.
Amazing. Brad, did you have anything else to add to that? I saw you getting excited there.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to talk about Edmonton's space and what Edmonton really is from an esports perspective, because Edmonton has made news many times in esports, but there's kind of that missing connection for Edmonton esports. When you see the article, you hear a name of a player or a person involved, and I think it's kind of a common thing that comes up with Edmonton and esports is people will leave and move on to other projects or outside of Edmonton, because in that time there wasn't a lot of backbone, a lot of support systems in Edmonton for those kinds of things, and I think that brings in a greater discussion about esports support as a whole. Kind of the comparison of, you look at something like a large institutionalized sport like the NHL, where if you want to get into the NHL and you want to get into sports in general, you go, oh, well, I'm a youth looking to get involved in hockey, so I'm going to go to my little league or my community center and join their hockey team, or start playing and going to tryouts, and my school might have support for that, or scholarships, or all those different things. And esports at this time, or at least in our area, doesn't have a lot of that yet, and that's a kind of a key difference, key piece to what makes esports in Edmonton a little different. With all this size, all these groups, all these people that are interested in playing, we're really lacking that support structure. There isn't an esports little league or coach yet.
Yeah, and even with like these student groups, they're all thriving, but with very little support and acknowledgement from their respective institutions. It's really just a grassroots initiative, full out at all levels right now. And to kind of paint a picture, before the pandemic, I mentioned the University of Alberta student group there running their Smash Brothers tournaments on a weekly basis. Imagine this: every Friday, there's 130 people crammed into a lecture room at the basement of the Computer Science Center with 4 to 5 hours to finish their tournament, and we're playing there into the late evening, and there's no equipment, so everyone has to crowdsource the TVs and the monitors and the consoles to make these events happen. And even for my events here in Edmonton and Brad's events down in Calgary, we're really just bursting at the seams in terms of how much demand there is to participate and to compete and to engage in this space, but with very little resources and support. And so certainly that capacity building is a huge part of this as well.
For sure. And Tina, yeah, what did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's super exciting because I know for a long time esports has been very localized, or it's been those sorts of very large, exciting events that are often sort of localized in certain cities. You think to California, you think to LA, you think to Burbank, or you even go and you think of South Korea, or even Poland or Berlin. And I think it's really exciting to see, beyond just production localization, a lot of interest outside of just these bigger stadium filling events, and kind of going down into the local level and seeing how we can support the grassroots communities that have been here for so long. And I think it's really interesting to see that interest, especially as esports has become a lot more mainstream recently, to see the fact that, the Alberta Esports Association can even pop up and give the support to all of these people who are interested in actually supporting what's here in Edmonton instead of looking outward.
I think that's a fantastic point, because really what we want to talk about too is how Edmonton compares on a global scale, because I know we're a little bit behind, but definitely I think it's something that we have all of this stuff that you two have been working on, as well as folks like Tina, as rest of the AESA organization. You've all been here working on things. So when it comes to a global scale, we don't obviously see, like Brad was saying, this Edmonton esports or Alberta esports even, but how do we compare on that?
Well, it's really interesting actually, because I think for a long time, and I think probably a lot of Edmontonians can get this feeling as well, we're not really, when Americans or even people outside of the country think of Canada, we're not usually the first name that pops up. And I think that's kind of been a struggle in sort of building the branding. People know of Toronto and people know of Vancouver. In fact, Vancouver had the opportunity to not only host like the LCS finals and the international, but now they have extreme support by even localizing with the Overwatch League, and even Toronto is now localized with the Overwatch League. And those two have had a lot of opportunities to sort of grow their systems and be a part of the uh, global scene in a way that Edmonton just really hasn't. But in a way, they're quite nascent into the industry as well. When you think of sort of systems and proper leagues in esports, you think of South Korea, or you think of places in Europe. You think of California, who have had these histories for a long, long time of production and these grand stadiums. And well, it's really nice to dream that we might hit that point one day. We're not going to be filling Rogers Place tomorrow, outside of the fact that there's a pandemic going on. There's just simply not that space and that reputation, and it takes a lot of effort to grow. I think with culture, and as things become more normalized, it's hopefully a little bit more exciting. But I think it's important to realize that there is a lot of work that gets put behind making these spaces, and I think it's also important to recognize there is not a lot of sort of that mainstream esports that you think about in Canada. I think some of the biggest events that have happened in, even not even in the province, but just in the country, include something like DreamHack Montreal, which happens at best once a year. And kind of that growing from those local spaces that are like the central hub of esports, and kind of moving forward is going to take a lot of time, a lot of support, and a lot of investment.
Oh, definitely. And we've seen teams like Western University do amazing at collegiate League of Legends, but we haven't been able to see that of like the University of Alberta or University of Calgary. And we want to cheer along and we definitely want to have that little competition going on. It wouldn't be a Battle of Alberta if we didn't have something like that.
For sure.
But when it comes to maybe like the future of what Edmonton looks like, is it attracting just those big major events, or is it building up a little bit more than that?
If I may, I think the key thing that to focus on the future, and especially highlighting that point about Canada and where we are, is comparing those support systems. You look at any of the major names when you think of esports, and those systems are there. Korea has government support. The collegiate systems are there. The reason you're not hearing about these large teams in Canada is because the players are there, but there isn't support in that sense. We don't have the gaming stadium is a wonderful example in BC, making a lot of pace, and a lot of other companies are doing fantastic things to get these things going. But until we have that collegiate level support locally, then you don't have a local collegiate team, no matter how good the players are. They end up leaving. And I think that's something I want to highlight on is the kind of misconceptions or the pieces missing. And I'm sure Tina can speak better to this than I can, but understanding that esports is way more than the players. The news talks about the best esports players, the best people, but behind that is coaches, the mentors, all the production individuals, all the people making these events happen. If there wasn't someone putting that all together, there wouldn't be esports players to begin with. There wouldn't be a place to showcase them. Yeah, go ahead and add to that.
Yeah, I think it's just really about long-term participation and sustainability. Oftentimes, it's the big draw of hosting that major event and having that huge, attraction. But then what happens for the rest of the year? You really need to be able to build up that community, build up that fan base, and build up a lot of different types of resources and pathways and activities that can support this ecosystem year round and year after year. So even with Vancouver hosting those major events, they're still back to not square one, but it's not like they're hosting those events every single weekend. And what's really great is the Vancouver Economic Commission did publish the Vancouver Esports strategy to outline next steps in terms of developing a sustainable esports ecosystem within the province of BC. And certainly, we're right now exploring opportunities to do the same here for the province of Alberta, start taking next steps, not just for the city of Edmonton, but for the province of Alberta. So it's all the gears are moving. It's just a matter of following through. And one thing that we're very proud of as well with the Alberta Esports Association leading the way here is being very deliberate in establishing ourselves as a value-driven nonprofit organization to make sure that if esports is to be built in Alberta, that it's built in the right way. And so we really want to be able to cultivate and foster and grow esports within the province in a sustainable and healthy manner.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important to remember, like, behind all the glitz and glamour and the stadiums and the players with the $1 million contracts is people like us. It's the people the tournament organizers, the production assistants, and even then, before all that, even behind like just running an esports organization, there's people who do influencer management, there's talent agencies, there's production agencies, there's so many other opportunities for these spaces to grow. Like, for example, Texas is already growing as well as a space for production, for a space for personalities, for content to kind of thrive. And there's opportunities in Edmonton as well. It's just we have to see kind of what's beyond the Twitch front page almost, and what we can do to help elevate those sort of systems.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and we can see the work that you all have been doing at that local level as well. You've now done stuff with the Edmonton Public School Board. Obviously, we saw some St. Trojans things. Norquest is kind of starting up their program as well. It's something that we are seeing a little bit of traction as well. But is it really important for you all to get to those Edmonton Public School Board kids and get them ready and prepped for a collegiate?
I mean, I think the key thing is building a community. Behind those values, behind those kind of a vision, is to make sure that everybody is there having a good time and really supporting each other. So esports isn't born on a single person being great at games. It's built on everybody wanting to be involved and wanting to be part of the esports picture. And I think that Edmonton Public School Board is a great example of that, where they have this network of individuals that are interested in games and want to take part in some way, and giving them the opportunity to flourish and meet other people with like interests will do absolute wonders for growing that scene. And that's something that everyone can do kind of on their own. The little individual efforts of people reaching out to friends and reaching out to others around them will do a huge impact.
Definitely. Well, I think we all have seen, like South Korea leading the way. I remember the StarCraft tournaments back in the day, or Quake and whatnot. And it was kind of a dream to see this happen at, your local school level, let alone your university level, let alone your provincial level. So how do you take something that is what people consider a dream and kind of make it into a reality? I know it's a very heavy question.
We are flying by the seat of our pants, to say the least. Yeah, it's certainly a dream come true, especially having been around during those StarCraft times and seeing that happen in South Korea, and never really ever fathoming that ever happening here. But seeing the growth of esports happen over the last, half a decade has been pretty substantial. Yeah.
If I may, I'd love to highlight. I mean, there's something kind of phenomenal but scary about esports at the same time, which is when you think about those StarCraft tournaments, you think about the names you remember for 15 years ago, and that there's still the primary leaders in that industry. And
Yep.
it goes to show that even with 15 years of explosive development in esports, there still hasn't been a astronomical increase in positions and people involved, which just goes to show the amount of research and development that still has to go into esports even today to make it flourish to the potential it can, because we're still leaning on the backs of the greats from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And Tina, working with more international teams in the past, you've kind of seen all that whole machine and what it goes into really making these teams effective and be able to branch out. And you, as you were saying, there's so many people involved in this. It's not just the players, it's not just the coaches, it's everything and anything. So when we talk about catching up to places like South Korea or even Europe at this point, what do we think is kind of the first step there?
I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about because there's so much that's available, and there's a lot of, I think like what we miss is that there's a lot of local initiatives happening in these regions as well. I know even beyond just Edmonton, I know there's so much development and focus in the UK and in Scotland about growing the collegiate scene, that a lot that kind of gets skimmed over when you think of just Excel in the LEC, or like the successful casters and personalities that are from that space. But it's important to remember that everywhere is ambitious as you can imagine, and we're all growing at the same time. Esports and the organizations that already existed have definitely had a head start, but it'd be foolish for us to pretend that there's not a greater push to kind of support and greater expand the space than what it is right now. And that is people wanting to help out in the back, whether it's developing even simple things like systems support. There's so many physicians, physicians and physiotherapists interested in entering the space and protecting players, or law and giving support. There's so many options beyond just being a player, being a coach, being a caster, and being able to do things and support this space. And I think it's even more important to remember that esports is fundamentally global. We have the regions in our esports, of course. There's the jokes about NA and EU and how the East dominates in its own way. But it's important to remember that, yes, we may be shipping our talent out, but in the end, it is ultimately a network where we're all kind of supporting each other and kind of in our goal to elevate esports to the next step.
Yeah, it's like a rising tide lifts all boats.
For sure. And like you folks are mentioning, we've seen a lot of talent come from Alberta. They just had to leave to go somewhere. I mean, we were talking about the first ever visa that came out of Alberta. We're a special place that has a lot of history with esports. So to say that we need to catch up, I think I definitely agree with what Tina was saying, that it needs to be this big global focus and as a team. And I feel like when we talk with AESA execs and your whole team, we see people from all across Alberta just so interested and so passionate about creating a safe space, not only for players, but everyone who's involved.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that, again, a very deliberate decision that we took to register ourselves as a nonprofit and to be the Alberta Esports Association and function very similarly to a traditional sports association in filling those gaps. It's not something that is necessarily exciting for most, and it's very indicative of what Tina mentioned of all the work that needs to happen on the back end that is often forgotten. But we've seen over the last 15 years that Brad and I have been around, we've seen a lot of for-profit, opportunistic business ventures enter the esports space, and they come and go when they aren't able to generate the revenue because they're not approaching this in a holistic way to actually build up that community to actually have sustainable growth. And so with us, like one of the first things that we did was establish a code of conduct, a compliance model, establishing a task force, and really building that safe esports system, much like you would with safe sports in traditional sports space. And really just acknowledging that, just like Tina mentioned, that esports is a multidisciplinary sector. And it's not just about the gamers in the seats playing and competing, but it's all the people in the back end putting those events together, the graphic designers, the media, and even branching out and looking towards traditional sports. There's sports performance psychologists and coaches, and there's just this huge industry behind this. And so one thing that we've been pushing as well, and having Kristen Q and our team as our health and wellness exec, and pushing those health and wellness initiatives is just really a lot of moving parts to build this up. And so even within our own organization, our scope is so wide, but there's just so much that needs to be done to build this up in a meaningful way.
Definitely. And I think we can see that, from my own organization, the Edmonton Screen Industries Office and Calgary Economic Development. Obviously, esports is the big sexy term. It's very easy to be like esports, and people instantly are like, yes, let's talk about it. But doing that in a way where I think my coworker said it best. It's not like you're explaining what esports are. It's the same as saying, okay, what are sports? Because every single game is different. And I think that's the biggest thing that people need to grasp is, like you mentioned, Overwatch League, very differently set up than how we see League of Legends. So how do you tackle that when someone says, what are esports? Because it literally could be anything from like the luge to soccer. I think you said it best, Victor, when you jokingly said hockey 2.0 to us the other day.
Yeah, I use that exact example. Like when they say esports, it's like, well, if I say winter sports, does that mean curling, hockey, luge? Like there's just so much underneath that umbrella. And yeah, we talk about that too in terms of like you never expect like hockey 2.0, games, esports titles just change over time so rapidly, and it's such a dynamic space. It's very unique. And oftentimes what happens, for at least from my conversations, is people will see esports as like a business venture, which certainly can be, but they forget the sports part of esports, where it's about competing, it's about building communities and cultivating the sense of camaraderie and celebrating competition that often gets forgotten.
And I think even to add to that, I mean, I've been doing community events pretty much the entire 15 years, and I'm a little bit well known for doing silly, non-traditional formats. And something I've definitely learned is most of the community growth and the way that people interact with each other is so defined by knowing each other and becoming friends more than it is about the competition and the number one player, because they root for their friends, they root for the people they want to see improve, they learn from each other. And even from only a competition perspective, if you have players for Street Fighter and Smash Bros in the same room, you'll often see the Street Fighter players still cheering for their favorite Smash Bros player and vice versa. Even from a casual perspective, if you're not into competing and winning in esports, you can still gain from being involved in the culture of playing with your friends and learning to improve. There's a lot of self-gain and self-merit that can be made from learning about games and what they do, and it ties into other industries like game development, as you would imagine with Edmonton Direct. But it's something that I think a lot of people kind of neglect the idea of why you compete in the first place, and it's usually because you're looking for more people to play the game with.
I think it's even important on the global scale as well. We are, as social media, of course, which is what I'm known as for. It's about ultimately building a community. And while, yes, the numbers grow real big if you win the big tournaments, I think the important part is understanding that your first goal is to create a fan base and to engage the people. And often the people aren't there just because you win. They're there for a player that they adore, or for a story, or for the fact they've been there so long. Like, we all joke about specific fanboys and stuff like that, but you can't help but admire the fact that they're dedicated to that organization, and there's something unique and valuable of like that love and that loyalty that I think just can't be really ignored when we're talking business.
I can't count the number of times that people have brought up Evo Moment 37 when talking about esports, and that just goes to show how many people are interested in a specific moment that happened.
Well, that is one thing that kind of transcends it. Everybody can tell an exciting sports play, even if you don't like hockey. When you see something amazing, you know that that's a skilled athlete. And that's what we're talking about here, very skilled athletes. And, sometimes it leads to some fun and silly things like Brad was saying. I mean, I think you've had people from 7 years old all the way up to 77 compete. And, it's because some of these things are super accessible, like rock, paper, scissors. Literally anybody can join, right?
Mm-hmm. It's really such an amazing and unique thing when you think about the barriers to esports as compared to traditional sports, because oftentimes the barrier is all in your head. There are players that have made incredible strides with physical limitations that would prevent anyone from playing in football, but because they're such a smart and intelligent individual, they're able to surpass everyone else just because they know what they're doing. They're able to outthink their opponent, and they're able to play in a non-conventional way. Things like the Microsoft Adaptive Controller is something that I really love seeing because it allows people to get involved in games in a unique way that fits them comfortably. And I've had the opportunity to use these things to do really silly events as well, and those breaking those barriers where people are so used to their standardized controllers and all their standardized techniques that when you pull them out of that shell, they can really enjoy themselves, and it kind of creates that fun, unique experience that brought them into esports in that first place, is having fun engaging with something that is slightly out of the ordinary. And I can't speak enough to the value of just trying to play games and seeing what works for you.
Awesome. Well, I want to ask you all one more question because I know we're going into rock, paper, scissors and people are getting probably excited. I got to know, rock, paper, scissors. What do we go with?
That's a little easy for me.
Yeah.
We all know Brad's answer, but I want to know Tina's answer. She's behind the scenes.
I mean, psychologically, most people will just throw rock because it's easiest, or scissors because it's the one. So really, it's a balanced game. It's 50-50, or 33-30, whatever. It's equal chance. Just throw whatever. And at the point, it really honestly doesn't matter.
I always go rock too.
Yeah, I'll put it simply:
rock.
If you use rock, you're cool, but paper will win most likely. So, I mean, if we're looking at the stats, you can play the stats and play the win, or you can play rock because I play rock.
That's totally fair. Sometimes it's just an example and that's all you need, right? But I really want to thank you both, as well as bringing in Tina, who we don't get to hear from enough. So I'm so excited to have Tina on here. If people want to talk to you all, how do they find you? Let's start with Victor.
Sure. You can feel free to reach out anytime. My email is victor.lee@esportsalberta.ca. Otherwise, you can also follow me on socials with the tag VictraGG.
And how about yourself, Brad?
I mean, through Twitter, it's @ToastedBrad. But I do want to highlight, if you're interested in anything to do with the Alberta Esports Association, we do have a contact form on our website. That would be a great spot to get in touch with us about anything Alberta Esports Association related. Or if you just want to send me a funny picture about rock, paper, scissors, yeah, go ahead. Twitter's the best way.
Awesome. Can do. I will be sending them shortly, I'm sure. And how about yourself, Tina?
Yeah, for sure. Be sure to follow Esports Alberta on Twitter just to keep updated with what we're doing in the future. As for myself, you can follow my Twitter at ShadowMisstep, and that's the only social media. Oh, you should also follow Panda Global because numbers are good.
Shout out to Panda.
But yeah, shout out to Panda. But yeah, that's it for me.
Totally fair. I think we should also follow Tina wherever she goes, right? So we also need to follow those accounts. But definitely that Esports Alberta one, it's so fun. You guys post crazy fun content and a bunch of different things. So I'm excited to see the death screens shortly. But I just want to thank you three again. This has been so awesome, and I think you'll probably be getting a lot more questions about what is Hockey 2.0 coming your way soon. So thank you all so much, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you,
very
Madison.
much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good luck in
Thank
RPS,
you,
everyone.